From the beginning of horror, writers, directors, and actors have made everyone's personal fears come alive. The horror genre has always been around in one form or another, through oral stories and writings. But in 1896, French director Georges Méliès created The House of the Devil, a short film about a bat transforming itself into a man. In the 1900s, horror films were characterized by a monster terrorizing people, like Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde. Other genres of horror films came around. There were suspicions of filmmakers being communist, and even some actors. Examples of this is from a film called Them in 1954. That threatens Americans with giant man-eating ants who are exposed to atomic radiation. From the article Personality Types and the Enjoyment of Horror Movies, fear is thought to be one of humans' most important emotions. Continuing, the 1960s is when horror movies started stepping up their game. No longer were films only subject to foreign invasion or monsters, but the directors and writers started to look at the psychological horror, murder, and the usage of demons to scare audiences. For example, films that use psychological fears are Rosemary's Baby and Psycho. Rosemary's Baby is a 1968 film about a young wife that believes her offspring is not of this world. Psycho is a 1960 film about a Phoenix secretary who is on the run after stealing $40,000 from her employer. With her boyfriend, traveling on the back roads to avoid police, she stops at the Bats Hotel and meets a young man who is charming, with an interest in taxidermy. This thriller terror series first made its debut in 1974. Put simply, it is the cinematic incarnation of the most primeval fear mankind experiences, that of being captured and eaten by an animal more vicious than ourselves. Certainly, the elemental terror of being trapped, tortured, and consumed is grisly fonder enough to base a film around. But this masterpiece uses that as merely the foundation for multi-layered on the post-Watergate, post-Vietnam cultural schism America was then rolling in. Jaws hit the theaters in 1975. The amount of breathtaking shots in Jaws is immeasurable, the way that Spielberg manipulated lighting to conceal the monster of the ocean with the moon reflecting off the water. Also, the film has good cinematography. The moment Brody, a character in the film, realizes the shark has shown up while people are having fun in the water is a notable scene. It makes good use of the dolly zoom to draw attention to Brody having his fears affirmed. The shot in the beginning of the film where the viewer sees Watkins' legs from the point of view of the shark is great too. It succeeds in telling the viewer something is about to happen to this girl to kick off the story, and the audience is looking through the eyes of whatever is about to do it. Poltergeist was released in 1982 and was extremely influential on an entire subgenre of paranormal thrillers. Arguably, the most interesting section of the film occurs early on, as small hints build towards the ghostly presence to come, and also their origins. The Blair Witch Project was released in 1999. From the co-director Daniel Myrick on The Guardian, The Blair Witch Project is about 3 students who go missing after heading out into the Maryland woods to make a documentary about a legendary witch. The co-director continues, "The treatment covered what happens, but it had no dialogue. We wanted it all improvised. We already had some buzz going into the Sundance Film Festival, partly because of the website we built suggesting our student documentary makers really had disappeared." A Nightmare on Elm Street was first released in 1984. One of the most recognizable modern horror villains emerged from A Nightmare on Elm Street, the sacred Freddy Krueger. Freddy exhibits a personality, and it's not a nice one. His sense of humor is as sharp and jagged as his steel claws. Freddy is the demon in the background. His popularity, however, mandated that subsequent sequels center increasingly upon his character. He has a backstory, only part of which is revealed in the first film, and many of the later Elm Street chapters focus on the events that lead to Freddy's becoming the monster of dreams that he is. Current horror films today haven't really changed that much, with the exception of better effects and more gore. Also, many horror films now use the future as a setting just to give audiences some more existential fears of the future. While their subject matter and film style haven't changed greatly, over the past 100 years, what hasn't changed is their ability to terrify audiences by tapping into their personal fears. The first Insidious film came out in 2011, with 3 sequels to follow. Insidious, my personal favorite horror films, is known for its surprising number of these gotcha moments. These familiar and off-putting are the ways the characters and the film react to each new development. Wilson, the dad in the film, is displaying a strange lack of affect, responds to mysterious threats to his family by starting to stay late at work every night. Comic relief comes in the form of a pair of low-rent Ghostbusters working for a genuine psychic. But the horror franchise that just might emerge as the representative of the current era is a bit of an underdog. It's a series of movies where essentially nobody dies. A rarity in the horror genre because death is merely the start of an entirely new chapter of the story. It's a series that attempts to restore the creepiness of the afterlife. And it's a series above all about family. Finally, from Oxford Research Encyclopedias, the term horror film refers to a wide variety of films generally understood to focus on frightening topics like ghosts, monsters, and murder. Horror films have been consistently popular among filmgoers since the earliest days of cinema, in part because the genre has developed so many diverse variations in terms of theme, style, and tone.